Welcome to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast. Today I'll be talking about players to pick up in fantasy hockey and players to drop in fantasy football. Players to pick up in fantasy hockey. Erik Haula. Erik Haula is off to a great start with the Carolina Hurricanes, having put up 3 goals and 2 power play points in his first 4 games. Haula also has 13 shots on goal and 41 faceoff wins to go along with the 3 goals and 2 power play points, which is a great fantasy stat line. If your league counts faceoff wins, Haula is worth a pickup. Victor Olofsson. Victor Olofsson is off to a great start to the season with the Buffalo Sabres, having scored 4 goals in his first 4 games. Olofsson also had 4 power play points to go along with the 4 goals he scored this season. Playing on the red-hot Sabres power play, Olofsson is a must-add in any fantasy league, especially if you own Jack Eichel. James Neal. James Neal already has 6 goals so far this season, with 4 of them being on the power play. Obviously, James Neal isn't going to be the same player he was in Pittsburgh, but he certainly is capable of getting 25 to 30 goals. Playing alongside Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on the power play for the Oilers makes James Neal a must-add in any fantasy league. Colin Miller. Colin Miller has gotten off to a great start with the Buffalo Sabres, having put up a point in 3 of his first 4 games. Miller plays on the Buffalo Sabres' second D pair with Rasmus Dahlin and the second power play unit. Colin Miller should be a valuable 5th or 6th defenseman in a deep league. Neil Pionk. Neil Pionk is fitting in pretty well with the Winnipeg Jets. He has put up 2 goals and 3 points, along with 11 hits and 6 blocks so far this season. I wouldn't recommend picking up Pionk in a standard league, but he could be a solid 5th or 6th defenseman in a deep league. James Reimer. James Reimer is off to a great start with the Carolina Hurricanes. He is 2-0 with a 2.42 GAA and .940 save percentage. While you don't expect James Reimer to maintain this type of performance for the entire season, he should be a solid 3rd goalie in a deep league. If you have Peter Mrazek, it might be worth picking up James Reimer, as the Carolina Hurricanes are off to a great start to the season. Check out my fantasy sports blog at hockeywiztalksfantasy.blogspot.com. Players to drop in fantasy football. Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was one of the most hyped players heading into this season, but thus far, he has been a huge disappointment. Mayfield has 47.88 fantasy points this season. 27 quarterbacks have more fantasy points this season than Baker Mayfield. Players such as Gardner Minshew and Jacoby Brissett have almost double the fantasy points that Baker Mayfield does. If either of those 2 quarterbacks are available, I would take either of those 2 quarterbacks over Mayfield right now. Wayne Gallman. Wayne Gallman suffered a concussion in the Week 5 loss to the Vikings and has been ruled out for Thursday's game against the New England Patriots. The Giants can't seem to get any breaks. Now with Gallman out, they are on their 3rd string running back. With concussions, you never know how long it will take to be cleared, so it is best to drop Gallman and find another running back in free agency. Darrell Williams. After a great performance in weeks 3 and 4, Darrell Williams did not get any carries in the Week 5 loss to the Colts. With the return of Damian Williams, Darrell Williams looks to be the 3rd wheel in the backfield for the Chiefs. If you own Darrell Williams, you should drop him because there are better running backs available in free agency. Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard suffered his 2nd concussion of the season in the Week 5 loss to the Minnesota Vikings. While Shepard's production was great when healthy, the concussion issue could be a major concern moving forward. If you own Sterling Shepard, you have 2 options. You could either bench him, or you could drop him and find a replacement for him in free agency. Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown announced on Sunday that he does not intend on returning to the NFL. If you own Antonio Brown, you should drop him immediately and pick up someone who can produce on the field. Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson has been very quiet the last 2 weeks, averaging less than 40 yards receiving in each of the last 2 games. When Tyreek Hill returns, Robinson's value will go down drastically, but for now, he still has some fantasy value, especially with Sammy Watkins still out. If you own Demarcus Robinson, I think you should drop him because there should be some better options in free agency. Eric Ebron. The Indianapolis Colts have a bye week in Week 6, so Eric Ebron should be dropped in most leagues. Ebron has had a solid campaign. In 2 weeks, he put up over 10 fantasy points. However, he did have 2 weeks where he had less than 2 fantasy points, making him a somewhat unreliable player in fantasy. If you own Eric Ebron, you should drop him and pick up a tight end like Gerald Everett or Jason Witten. Houston Texans defense. The Houston Texans defense has been a massive disappointment so far this season. Although they have put up at least 8 fantasy points in each of the last 4 weeks, they have a real tough matchup in Week 6. In Week 6, the Texans will face Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs at Kansas City, and that will be a rough matchup for them. If you own the Texans defense, it is best to find another defense to replace them. Stephen Gostkowski. Stephen Gostkowski just had season-ending surgery to address a left hip injury, so he will be out the rest of the season. This means the Patriots will have to find a new kicker for the remainder of the season. If you own Gostkowski, you should drop him and look for a new kicker. Check out my Facebook page at Mr. HockeyWiz777 and my Instagram, Mr. HockeyWiz77. In my next podcast, I'll be talking about players to pick up in fantasy hockey and the top 5 quarterbacks in fantasy football this season.